Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Mason with the Colorado Snow Sports Museum. I am the current executive director of the museum. We normally and would love to do these presentation, our Through the Lens series in person. Clearly, in the world that we're in today, we are not able to do that. So we are so lucky to have Ellen Miller, who's a dear friend of mine, and she invited two friends of hers, Tracee Metcalfe and Kristine Chalk. These three women sitting in this room, I'm like shaking in my bones, have all climbed Everest, which I just think is an incredible feat. They're the most inspirational women that I could ever think of to have in this museum, and to what a better way to help the museum spread our mission. And the Colorado Snow Sports mission is we tell Colorado snow sports stories that educate and inspire others to seek adventure. So we want to hear your stories, and we hope that this inspires you to go climb your backyard, your back mountain, whatever you want to go do. Normally with this presentation series, we do this in-house, and it would cost $25 a person, and we would gather and we would hug and do all these fun things. But unfortunately, we can't do that. So if you feel inclined, it would be wonderful if you could use your phone, put it up to the QR code that it's going to be on the screen, and it'll go right to the donate page at the Colorado Snow Sports Museum's website. So we appreciate all of our supporters. We appreciate our donors, our members. A great way to support us is the gift shop. It's also online, and we're just so fortunate that we're still able to try and do these amazing stories and continue to telling these fun adventures. These women all live in Vail, so we are in the Vail exhibit at the Colorado Snow Sports Museum. This is Vail's DNA, and these women, their DNA is pretty incredible that they can do what they're doing. So I'm going to pass it off to Ellen Miller.
Thank you so much for having us here this evening, Jen. It's always an honor to be a part of the Colorado Snow Sports Museum, and I think I can speak on behalf of my friends that we're just absolutely thrilled to be here. All three of us are part of a pretty small club. I think to date there are about 74, 75 American women that have stood on Mount Everest summit, so it's kind of fun that we can gather here so easily with my friends that live in the Vail Valley to share some stories with the audience this evening. Kristine Chalk climbed Mount Everest in 2010, and I'm looking forward to hearing how you wove your passion for education into your climb. And then in 2016, Dr. Tracee Metcalfe summited Mount Everest as working as a physician and also climbing, so it'll be fun to hear about some of your experiences. I'd like to kick it off with you, Kristine. Do you want to talk a little bit about 2010 and what your experience was like in general?
In general? Gosh, that's a pretty open question.
Yeah.
So in 2010, my husband Brandon and I went to Everest with a permit under Henry Todd, and we went unguided but fully supported. And it meant I was teaching fourth grade at Red Sandstone at the time, and it meant leaving my classroom I think we left right after the March break. And so I got a leave of absence for the rest of the school year. And it was interesting. I think most of my students were really excited. Most of the parents were super supportive, thinking like, you're showing our kids that you're really following your dreams and, setting high goals and that sort of thing. I think we had some families that were apprehensive and nervous that maybe I wouldn't come back and what that would mean for their children. But, our full intent was to climb as safe as we could be. And, that's all you can ever do, right? And so we were very lucky to have a successful summit on May 25th, 2010.
Nice. And you got to share it. You got to share that with your classroom during the whole expedition, correct? That's cool. And then in 2016, I stayed up all night long watching you walk to the summit of Mount Everest. Tracee had a location device that she was carrying, and I had a really fun time watching you go up to the summit. You were also working as a physician on an expedition and being a climber. How was that for you?
Yeah, so I was working as the physician. I was working with a company called Himex that I had worked on several other expeditions as their doctor before. Um, so I was kind of familiar with that role, but I wasn't really prepared for the magnitude of how much harder it would be on Everest. Overall, I would say it was a great experience to get to do that. We didn't have too many serious illnesses during the trip. I can talk more about that later if you want. But yeah, it was a great experience. So thank you.
In hindsight, it's been a little bit of time since all of us climbed. When you reminisce, I know, Kristine, when we were talking about doing this presentation, you said, wow, I pulled out my climbing journal and went back and read it. And I've done the same thing, and it's really fun to kind of revisit a lot of the things that we forgot about. But when you revisited your journal, were there some poignant memories, really fun, interesting things that you had forgotten about that were, unique to your climb?
Well, I think when I revisited my journal, I actually revisited it another time because I did a parent presentation at Red Sandstone probably 3 or 4 years ago. And when I revisited it, then my intent talking to the parents was just kind of what it means setting those goals, those high goals, and what it means. Like, obviously my parents never intended at 10 years old, they weren't pushing me saying go climb Mount Everest, and I think that some of the things that when I revisited my journal that were interesting was that I forgot about some of the tough parts. I think that I have all these wonderful memories, and it was great, and that we summited, and I was so excited about that. And I think for us, actually, the trek in was really, really special. For us, we trekked in with some friends who were really just going to go to base camp, and so their main objective was going to base camp and just appreciating everything along the way. And I think that really was nice to kind of slow down and enjoy all that, and not have the whole trek in be an anticipation of the climb. Right. And then there were also lots of challenges. I don't know if you want me to go into that as well. I mean, I think that rereading my journal, I was telling you earlier that I was totally forgot on the way down. I wrote down that, I was coughing up parts of my trachea, and we got down to base camp and I couldn't even talk. And, just all these, the aftermath of it, I had totally just kind of blocked that out, and I think the other thing that is interesting is that the summit just still feels like it wasn't real almost, there's so much time and effort and preparation, and the acclimatizing and everything that you do to get ready. And then I think in part because you're up so high and because there's the lack of oxygen, but also just because it's one tiny portion of the entire climb, that it doesn't really feel real. And I don't know if you felt that too, Tracee, and you, Ellen, when you were there, but.
And Tracee, when you think back, to put some things into context, Tracee is still acting as Tracee is still in a role as an extreme high altitude mountaineer in the Himalaya. She's still presently involved with expeditions to 8,000 meter peaks. So, I'm kind of the retired older lady here. Kristine's raising small children, but Tracee's still out there getting after it. So I know that you might not have had as long a time to reflect on your kind of those poignant moments, but is there anything that really sticks out in your memory that was, something so meaningful to you that you would like to share?
I mean, there was a lot of really meaningful moments. I think the summit, even though, like Kristine said, it's hard, it's such a short period of time, it really, that day sticks out the most to me. That was kind of the day when I realized that it was really hard to be a doctor and be summiting Everest. Like somehow up until the summit day, I was able to kind of, in my mind, pull it off. I was able to just stay really positive when the team needed me to be positive, to kind of just stay within my comfort zone where I wasn't pushing myself too much. So I felt like rested, like I could be ready to assess the team members if anyone got sick. And like, I was just blown away on the summit day. It was so much harder than anything I could have ever imagined. So yeah, when I reflect back, like I just think about a little bit like the hubris to think that like I could summit Everest and be a useful doctor 12 hours later. That's just a little ridiculous. I mean, I will say I like got it back together within 24 hours, but that was a big surprise for me, and maybe it shouldn't have been, but that's like one of the things I really think about was just, it was really humbling, and just realizing that I think to be an effective doctor on an expedition, it's probably more important to go with the team pretty high, but maybe not all the way to the top. I think it's debatable, but that was way harder than I thought.
I think we can all agree that the summit day is a lot harder. Would you guys agree with that? You know, I think there are a lot of armchair mountaineers, you know, that have opinions about Mount Everest, but I'm really not that interested in hearing from those folks unless they've spent time in those higher camps and gone to the summit, because it's a lot. It's a huge challenge. One thing I would like to talk about that is fascinating to me that pertains to our neighborhood here is that both of you have extensive background climbing in the Gore Range. And I think it's worth talking about because for women, that's very rare. I don't know of many women that really get up into the Gore Range on a regular basis and do a lot of climbing, because it is remote, a lot of technicality, a lot of loose rock. Kristine, would you like to share with us your experience in the Gore Range and how that's supported you on your 7 summits quest?
I mean, most of all, I just feel lucky that we have the Gore Range right here in our backyard. I feel like it has so much to offer, and it's not easy to get into, and it's not easy. I mean, I feel like we've done a lot of like ski kind of expeditions back there, ski mountaineering. So we've been there summer and winter, and it's just kind of, you know, sometimes it's a long, difficult approach, and, you know, sometimes it's a more technical climb. But all of it kind of tests you both mentally and physically, which is just the preparation you need to go and climb bigger mountains. And so, so mostly we're just so lucky that it's right there. But is that, I mean, I don't know if you want more than that.
That's beautiful. And Tracee, I know that you just completed climbing all of the 13,000 foot peaks in the Gore Range, which I think is notable because so many of them are hard to access. Navigation is incredibly difficult. And I just want to say congratulations on that feat, because I know that's really tricky. So would you like to talk about how that has supported your present day climbing for 8,000 meter peaks?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I did. I was able to complete that, and in large part, I have to thank Kristine and her husband, because they've actually done some really great trip reports that helped me get information, because there's not a lot of information about the Gore. And I would say, you know, what do I want to say? Like Kristine said, I mean, it's long approaches. Like, there's not a lot of information out there, and a lot of them I did on my own, just because I don't have any friends that really want to trudge into the Gore. Like, they don't want to have to, you know, hike 10 miles just to start the fun climbing. So it's like, yeah, taught me some perseverance, route finding skills, things like that. And it's just, I feel lucky, like Kristine said, to have it right in our backyard, especially like during these COVID times when we can't travel. I just felt so blessed this summer to be able to just go into our home mountain range and, like, you know, put together my little project and work on it, and felt really lucky. Yeah.
You know, I think one other great asset that we have here in the Vail Valley is world-class ice climbing. And I think that, you know, I've talked to Jen Mason before. It's like, Colorado Snow Sports Museum, you know, pretty soon we should be including some ice climbers in this repertoire, because it's I don't know if a lot of people realize it's world-class ice just right here in East Vail, but I know for me, for my training, for some of my Himalayan peaks, that was really nice. It's like, oh, that's just right in the backyard or 10 minutes away from my job or whatever. So, Tracee, I'd like to go back and revisit being a physician on big mountaineering expeditions, even besides Everest. I know that you are called into situations that maybe from different teams, maybe it's into a Sherpa village where they really need to see a Western doctor and they don't have many Western doctors there. So I know that you're called upon a lot. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be in that dual role in general, as a climber and also as a Western doctor? Even though I know that you go on some trips just as a climber, they find out that you're a doctor and that's what I would like to talk about.
Sure, yeah. So I think the hardest thing about working as a physician on these big peaks is that just like a guide or anyone that's working, you don't really get a day off. And I don't really want to let my guard down. So, when we're trekking in, everybody wants to have a few beers at the tea house. I'll have a beer, but I'm like, you just never know, when danger is going to strike. I spent time working on Denali as well. And it can be the middle of the night that's when someone falls. You've got to just be on the alert. And, that it's good, but it wears on you a little bit. And I feel like sometimes, so I would say that not letting your guard down. And then I think having a positive attitude is really key. And then being able to relate to the climbers. So I feel like sometimes, I can see a climber having a bad day and just letting that bad day out. And I kind of want to do that, but I'm like, I really don't think I should do that. I don't think that's appropriate. Not to say I'm perfect. And some days, I just have to be in a bad mood. But for the most part, I try to stay really positive. And I really wanted the climbers to trust me because if they don't trust me, they're not telling me what's going on. And then I don't know if they're getting sick, and things can get a lot more dangerous. And we had one example with a photographer actually that was part of our team that just, he was sitting funny every time when we got to lunch, and he just said, oh, I think I pulled my back. And in the end, when he finally opened up to me, he actually had a big abscess on his back. It wasn't that he pulled a muscle, and he was at a point that he needed to be evacuated. And I kind of felt a little bit like, whoa, okay, I've spent so much time bonding with the climbers, and I'm not focused on the photographers, but they're part of the team. And so I think trying to kind of bond with everyone and create a comfort level so that they feel safe. They don't feel, because if you are the type of doctor where you're very much I don't know, those boundaries are strict, I feel like people won't come to you with the questions. And you're going to miss things, and people are going to get in more dangerous situations. I will say when we travel through Sherpa villages, people do really find out that I'm a doctor, but a lot of those villages have their own resources too. So I try really hard to have a balance of I don't want to be the doctor that came from North America that suddenly undermines what their good doctor has been telling them the whole time. And I feel like the first time it kind of caught me off guard on Manaslu was it was a parade of villagers coming in and wanting to ask me questions. And then finally I was like, well, what is your healthcare system here? And what do you have? And then I actually got to meet the nurse practitioner that was there, and we kind of worked through it together. And I was like, wow, that could have been a huge mistake on my part if I had just been because at first they were like, oh, the other doctor just gave us this arthritis medicine or that. And I'm like, well, it's not that I don't want to give you medicine. I want to do it in the context of your own healthcare system. So it is interesting for sure. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's super interesting. And then Kristine, I want to ask you this question from my own experience of being a child and having a 6th grade teacher who took me rock climbing for the first time. Mm-hmm. And that opened up a whole can of worms because, from there, I learned to rock climb, and he took us camping, and he opened up my mind to all of these things that were possible. So my question to you is, as an educator, do you understand the impact and inspiration, of inspiration that you're giving to kids with your Seven Summits project and climbing Everest, especially to the young girls?
I mean, I think that initially I kind of got into climbing bigger mountains because I was leading trips for Moondance Adventures, and we went to climb Mount Rainier. And, coming from Colorado, it wasn't like a mind-blowing climb. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't feeling super altitude sick or exhausted on the summit or anything like that. But these teenagers that were coming from, lower altitudes and not as much training and stuff, it was just the biggest thing they'd ever done. And they were just like blown away and just in tears or, just so exhausted when they got to the summit. And it kind of opened my eyes to like, I need to be pushing myself harder. Like I looked at these kids and I was like, this is what I should be doing. I want to be pushing myself to these limits. And that's when I kind of started, we started making plans for Denali after that. And then other peaks kind of followed. And yeah, I think that it was really fun with my fifth graders when I left to kind of get little text messages on the sat phone from them. And, they actually, in the end, they had their fifth grade graduation while I was gone. So I sent back we were back down at base camp. So I was able to like create a little video to send back that was played at their graduation. But I still have kids. When we came back, we did a presentation, we did a slideshow, and we brought in our big down jackets and our big boots and our, all of our gear, and let the kids like try it all on. And it was just so fun because I feel like their questions about it are so honest. And to this day, there's still kids who will say like, oh, can I come see your pictures from Everest? Or something that sticks out in my mind is I saw a mom at school one day and she said, oh, what's so funny is my son told me that you climbed Mount Everest. And I told him, oh, it must be Mount Albert. And she goes, no, and he insisted on it. And then, somehow she looked into it, or I don't know how she found out, but she was like, and then I realized that I told him he was lying and he wasn't, like, that it was true. So I think that, I think the other side of it too was just being really honest with the kids and like telling them about when it was like really hard for me, and when it was, I was at points of tears during the climb once or twice, and, just the thing, and that I was scared during parts of it. And I think being honest about that and just how hard it is, and I'm afraid I'm guilty of, using it as like also like do you think that I gave up when we were, at this point of the climb, for, students and my own kids, I say that. Yeah, right. So it is, but I think I kind of always like to say to people too, though, it's like, it's not something that, just these, big, amazing athletes are going to do. Like I wasn't doing anything more than just kind of climbing in our backyard and then kind of worked up to it. And so when kids ask me about it, I just kind of have to say, if you want to do it, you can do it. You just need to put in the work and the effort to do it. Yeah. So I think that's the big lesson. Yeah. So
I will say, I know that all three of us can agree on is not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of training, a lot of saving up money. It's a beautiful investment, and I think with its level of risk, Mount Everest, it offers just beautiful, wonderful rewards if you can get to the summit. But Kristine, you said something a minute ago about the mom doubting that you had climbed Everest. It kind of segues into my next question. I know you get this because you are with Brandon sometimes, and people are like, oh, you climbed Everest, Brandon, and they kind of look at you and have to ask you again as a woman, did you get to the summit? Tracee, I don't know if you've experienced this since your summit. I know that Melissa Arnault, who's a professional mountain guide, female mountain guide, who's summited Everest numerous times, has spoken very recently in the last month about how frustrating it is that people have a doubt that she has climbed Mount Everest simply because she's a female. Do you want to share your thoughts on that and some of your experiences with that?
Yeah, it is definitely something that irks me because it is something where, I do think that some of it is an innocent, people talk about Mount Everest and they are so amazed. They're like meeting you and they're saying, oh my gosh, you climbed Mount Everest. And so then they say, oh, you made it all the way to the top? Yeah. And they'll ask both Brandon and I that. But then I feel like the part that really irks me is when they turn to me and say, you did too? And I do think, that there are times when, a team, like a husband and wife or, boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever, will climb together and then the husband continues on and the wife stays at base camp or something like that. And so I do think there's reason for that stereotype, but I don't think it warrants the doubt, Right. And I can remember a time on Everest, and actually this was part of rereading my journal, of we would often go up to like the Pomori base camp just to kind of get a little exercise and get out of base camp for a little bit. And I remember there was one day that I wrote, I went up to Pomori base camp and I just sat down and I cried. And I felt like, I just had to deep down, dig into myself and say, I can do this myself. It's not, because there's lots of tension at base camp about who's going to get what weather window and who's going to get to go and is the weather window going to come and that sort of stuff. And I think there's different ways that that people deal with altitude too. And that's something that climbing with my husband we've discovered over the years, is that we have different reactions to being at high altitude and the anxiety that comes with it and everything. And so I think I had that moment of just kind of being like, I can do this, and I need to just, put out of my head what everybody else is thinking or saying or doing. And if I feel like I'm getting out of shape sitting waiting for the weather window, I need to take care of that. Or if I feel like, mentally I need to step it up a little bit, then I need to do that, and I think in the end that's what kind of, pulls you through, is that you do need a team and you do need climbing partners, but you need to rely on yourself as well. Yeah. So
I will agree with that, because when we're climbing at 8,000 meters, we're typically not on a rope with people. We're on a fixed rope as individuals. And I will note to our audience that Kristine summited on her own. She was not with Brandon when she summited, and that's notable. So what about you, Tracee? Have you had that doubt from people about being a female in the 8,000 meter peak world these days?
Yeah, I have, for sure. I think it's a little bit twofold, because most people, when they work as a camp doctor, they're the base camp doctor. So initially, I think it doesn't start out as a gender thing. It's like, oh, so you went to base camp. You were the base camp doctor. And I'm like, well, yeah, I did, but I actually summited. So then I started calling it to try to help people understand, no, I was a climbing doctor, not a base camp doctor. So again, I think that's pretty innocent, because that's the way that people have done it in the future. But definitely still, I feel like not so much with my friends and here in Colorado. I would say it's almost more on international climbs. I feel like people sort of poo-poo me. They're like, oh, well, you were part of Russell Bryce's team, and that's why you got to the summit. And it's well, that's a huge part of why I got to the summit, but I still got to the summit, and I got myself down. So I do feel that. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's an interesting topic to deal with. The typically Himalayan climbing has been a man's world, and of course these days we're seeing more female climbers in that world. But I know back in the day that I was really on expeditions a lot, back in the late 1990s. Around 2000, 2001, I was oftentimes the only female on an expedition. And I can relate to your moment of kind of breaking down and saying, oh, I remember going into my tent and saying, you know what, I'm going to do this. I don't care what all of the guys are doing. Got my act together and I can do this. And having to draw from my own reserves to find that grit to focus and get to the summit. So for me, I'm wondering if you two have a precious moment that, for me, it was, I remember saying to myself on the summit, okay, Ellen, take this moment in. You know, and it's like, okay, you've got one foot in Nepal and one foot in Tibet, and just stand here and just take this in and remember this moment forever. And I'm so glad I did that, because I feel like it's like burned into my memory. Was there something that was so beautiful or so poignant or such a deep grace, that something about the people or the mountain or the culture that you'll never ever forget?
I mean, definitely the Nepalese people and culture. I'll never forget. And I feel like when we first came back, it was like immediately I wanted to get back there, you know. And I was, you know, when we had, I had a student who, his family had a house in Pengboche, and I was like, let's trade homes. Like, I want to go live in your house and you can come live in my house. Like, and so I definitely, and I still, you know, I know we're kind of caught up in raising little kids right now, and it's difficult because I feel like the peak that we passed along the way, Alma de Blanc, is the one that we would love to go back and climb. But right now with little kids, it still feels a little risky to potentially leave them without parents. So we will be back, though. I just have conviction that we'll get back to, you know, the Himalayas, and I want to show it to our kids, you know, and have them meet the people that live there. And just that culture was really, I think the other thing is that a lot of times you meet people around Vail who are planning a trip to Kilimanjaro, and nothing against Kilimanjaro. I really enjoyed that climb and that the people there and everything. But I have to say that even if you were just going to base camp, I think that is just an amazing experience to experience the culture. As far as the mountain, I think that there's a moment that sticks out in my head of when the sun first started coming up, and you could see the curvature of the earth, because you're up so high, that like you could just, and we have a photograph of it that we took on a disposable camera, because we kind of, you know, we weren't sure if our camera battery was going to withstand the cold. And so it's not the best quality photo, but I mean, I love that picture because that moment really sticks out in my head. So
That's a beautiful memory. And I think both Tracee and I will encourage you, go climb Alma de Blanc, because it's a very special mountain, and you will love that. What about for you, Tracee? Was there just some moment that you'll remember forever?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Kristine that the Sherpa people and the people of Nepal, like, that was the most special thing and what really kept me going back. As far as like a concrete moment, like, people always will kind of want me to say it's the summit, and it's so cool that you had that moment on the summit. And I really didn't. So I would say like the summit was felt like just survival. But the 2 days before, when we were at Camp 3, just getting up to Camp 3, like being one of the first ones on my team, like feeling okay, like starting to make water for people. And then just relaxing in the tent there, just knowing what lay ahead of us, hearing the avalanches because you're on the Lhotse face, so your tent is like anchored into the snow, and you can't really get out of your tent safely to even go to the bathroom. You pretty much need to be roped up, and it was just like, wow, like I am doing this. I am roped to the side of a mountain. There's avalanches everywhere. I'm with this team of people that I really respect and like, wow, how lucky am I? And I just remember kind of thinking, like, summit or no summit, like this is the moment that I love. So that was a really special moment to me.
Those moments, I'm going to try and cling to them until I'm a very old woman. The Lhotse face, I remember being up at the Lhotse high camp and feeling that angst of, okay, can't get out of the tent here, gotta stay here. And then Nima, who I was climbing with at the time, this was the night before our Lhotse summit, pulled some momos out of his backpack. I was like, you've got momos to eat? Yes! Party, up here, 25,000 feet. So yeah, those little moments that we share, particularly with the Sherpas, I think are very touching and poignant. And I can't overstate the beauty of the people of Nepal. And I feel like I can speak for all of us here that none of us would ever have reached the summit of Mount Everest without the hard work of the Sherpa people. And I can pretty much confidently say no Westerners pretty much would be reaching the summit of Mount Everest without a lot of hard work from the Sherpa people. So we want to give credit to where credit is due. Is there anything in particular, Kristine, from your experience that you want to share with your audience, share with the audience about being an educator and educating from Mount Everest?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of what else beyond what I've already shared.
Okay, just make sure you put Amma de Blam on the to-do list, okay?
It is. It's on the to-do list.
Okay. And Tracee, do you want to talk a little bit about your future Himalayan climbing plans or your dreams or?
Sure. Oh, shoot, I gotta figure out. Okay. Sorry. I'm a little clumsy. That happens all the time. Yeah, I'm hoping to go back to Nepal this spring. I would really like to try to climb Kanchenjunga, which is the third highest mountain in the world. It's a very remote mountain. It doesn't see a lot of traffic, so it's kind of, in my mind, a little bit the anti-Everest. Just going to be different. It's not going to be tons. Most people that want an 8,000 meter peak would want something that's a little more straightforward. So I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know if it'll happen this spring or not. If it doesn't happen, I was supposed to do it last spring, and it didn't happen. So I'm training, and I'm going to be ready if we're able to travel. If we're not able to travel, that one's still like definitely on my list, and I'm going to go back there at some point and try that mountain. So we'll go, and then one step at a time. Yeah.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that's what I got. Thanks.
Well, I want to honestly say for Tracee, who's still out there climbing 8,000 meter peaks, yay! You've got the best wishes of the entire Vail Valley going with you. And the beautiful thing about, these days, we can track our friends typically on mountains now. Back when I was climbing, social media wasn't a thing, thank God, because I think that would have been very difficult for me. But these days, we can get information about climbers from the peaks, and we can follow their tracking devices, or they can send back photographs, and that's really fun for us to follow you. So just know that we're cheering you on. So I think we have some questions from the internet, and I would like to thank you for sending in your questions.
Yeah, here's a couple questions that we've received. So.
This is a question for Kristine. You mentioned your quest for the 7 summits. Where are you in that quest? And what's your website? Is it Brandon and Kristine? Yeah, I think it is. Please see the Chalk's website. As Tracee mentioned earlier, it's amazing photographs, amazing route descriptions, trip reports. Brandon has very meticulously, chronicled. Yes. Yeah, they're all of their climbing. So please see their website because it's fascinating.
Yeah, Brandon gets credit for the website. I feel like we both kind of contributed when we were initially putting it together with, our 7 summits climbs, and then he has really kept it up and talked about everything that we've done since then. But yeah, so I think in terms of the 7 summits, I don't think either of us really set out initially going for the 7. Brandon's a little bit more of a checklist person than I am. In fact, we climbed Denali together, and that was kind of the start of our relationship too. We were just kind of climbing buddies until then. And then I think we figured we were spending all of our time together, and if we made it through that together, that and then from there we went on to climb Elbrus, and then Everest was actually our third. And I think I took a little bit of convincing, on Everest, because I was initially not just as wowed by I want to check off the highest mountain in the world. It was more of a there's other really exciting peaks that we could climb and not spend as much and not, deal with the logistics and everything of, as many people being there. And then I think what did it for me was just reading up on the history of Everest and reading all these books and of, past experiences on it and feeling like I want to be there, even though I know in 2010 it was so different than it was 50 years before, or even 10 years before. I just wanted to be there and experience it. And so then after Everest, we kind of, I think, knew that was our we might as well continue on that goal. And we finished it with Antarctica in 2012, I believe. I think I'm getting my years all confused. And then after that, we just started on our latest goal, which is my daughter was born in 2014. So we kind of have slowed down on the international climbs, and I'm glad we did them when we did, because I think when we were setting out on that goal, I kind of, before having kids, you never know what it's going to be like and how it's going to change your life. And I think I was quick to say, oh, our kids are just going to, come along with us on everything we love to do. And we could probably still go climb these peaks after having kids. My parents could take care of them. And I'm really glad that we completed that goal before moving on to this one, because we're taking a little hiatus and we're still getting out as much as we can and a little more locally and that sort of thing. But yeah, so that was kind of how our 7 summits evolved.
I do want to say that, it's kind of cool that all of us live here in the Vail Valley, not just because we have the Gore Range. I was thinking about Dick Pownell, and he was one of our Vail pioneers. And he was on the first American expedition to Mount Everest in 1963. And I know that he influenced my climbing. Tracee and I got to spend some time with Dick before he passed. But I just kind of want to give a tip of the hat to Vail pioneers and to Dick Pownell for leading the way to the Himalaya for all of us to follow, because I think that's a very important part of our local history. Okay, Tracee. What did you miss the most from the comfort of home? And this is from Sean in Crested Butte.
Okay, I'm gonna have to think about that one for a little bit, because you do have some comforts when you're at Everest Base Camp for sure. What did I miss the most? I would probably say it's like a toss-up between beer and pizza, to be honest. They make pizza at Everest Base Camp, but it's really high. It's 17,000 feet, so it's called pizza, but it's not really pizza. And I'm like, normally after a climb, I really enjoy having a pizza and a beer and just kicking my feet up and being warm. And so that's probably what I miss the most. I miss my dog too. My dog Riley, she's gone now, but I did miss her a lot. So.
Okay, were you able to sleep at the high elevations? This is from Lisa in Denver.
I would say mostly, but the really high elevations probably not as much. At Camp 3, I think we were that was when we first kind of started playing with the oxygen and kind of getting used to the oxygen mask and that sort of stuff. And so I feel like that was kind of Brandon's nemesis. My nemesis was the ice fall, and his was the oxygen mask. I think he just felt really claustrophobic. We're not like scuba divers or anything, so we hadn't had that experience. And so I think at Camp 3, sleep was difficult because we were kind of just, and like you said, you can't really get out of your tent. Like I remember trying to get out and go and get him a replacement because we thought like part of his mask was like kind of broken. And so I remember getting out of the tent and going over to our friends, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to like put on my crampons and everything just to walk 10 feet away, And then up at Camp 4, we started out on our summit at like 11 o'clock at night, the first night that we were supposed to go, and it was just blowing snow and we couldn't see anything. And about an hour into it, we decided to turn back. And so then we were in our tents for a full day at Camp 4, kind of waiting and seeing if that was going to clear up. And so during that time, that was kind of, you're kind of like doze off a little bit, and we were kind of on and off the oxygen because we were trying to conserve our oxygen. And so, you go on it for a little bit and then you take it off. And I actually have a photograph of us, and we just look like we're, Yeah. You can tell that you're just kind of like deprived, and so I think that makes it difficult. But I think at the lower altitudes, I mean, relatively lower, right? Like at base camp, you get used to it, and once you get used to hearing avalanches and the ice shift and that sort of thing, then you sleep at night. So
I know for me, I was so filled with kind of anxiety the night before my summit. I don't think I slept at all, but I was tucked in between two really nice guys in my sleep. One of them was Chris Warner, a friend of Tracee and I's, and all I remember is him saying, really early the next morning, he's like, "Good morning, Everest," and thinking, it's time to shine. It's time to bring all these months and years of training and climbing and do this thing. What about you? Were you able to sleep at the high camps, and still to this day?
I mean, not so much at the high camps. I will say some of the best sleep in my life has been at base camp. And I think it's just you're removed from the day-to-day worries of like all the little stresses. And so even though you're at like 17 to almost 18,000 feet, it's some of the best sleep I've ever had in my life was at base camp. Then up, I would say above 22, definitely by 24, it's hard. I remember before our summit climb, there was like 3 of us in the tent, and I did doze off a little bit, nothing major, but it was hard to sleep. And I remember I've also climbed Macaloo, and I did an experience like you where we kind of had a false start. We were at Camp 4, which was really high, and we started out, and it was just the wrong conditions. And so then we spent a whole day just at Camp 4 trying to conserve oxygen, and I can't call that sleep. Like, we would pass out, and like I would, like, the Sherpa I was with, I would kind of like shake him, and then he'd be like, okay, oh yeah, no, I should put the oxygen on, and then we would do that little dance, but it wasn't sleeping per se. So I think it is really hard to sleep up high.
Yeah. I remember Phil Ursler saying something though, where it was actually on Rainier. Phil Ursler said that, when everyone's so anxious about summit day, and he said, well, just lay down and rest your body. It doesn't matter if you're not asleep, you're resting your body and you're getting rejuvenated for the climb. And I think even just like, I'll remind myself of that mentally a lot, because I feel like even just that will relax my mind enough that then I can actually fall asleep, Yeah. So I think that's a helpful reminder.
Yeah, that's impressive. Both of these ladies that I'm flanked by here have spent over 24 hours at 26,000 feet, or I don't know how high your high camp on Macaloo is, but that's impressive, audience out there. Audience out there, are you going to the QR code for the Colorado Snow Sports Museum and making a donation on behalf of everybody here? We would really appreciate that. Okay, time for the next question. How much time do you spend on the summit? My first summit was very fast. Conditions were not ideal, so we climbed from the north side from Tibet, and I'm thinking 10 or 15 minutes. Second summit for me from the south side, we just thought we were so great up there. It was warm and it was sunny, and we're taking off our oxygen, and I don't know why we did that. We spent about an hour up there really savoring and high-fiving and enjoying people from all over the world that had this common goal, and it's really an amazing thing to be up there with people from all over the world, and it's just so joyous and peaceful. So I was lucky I got to experience it for a long time on the second climb. What about you, Kristine?
On the summit of Everest, it was actually pretty short, Like you said, Brandon had actually summited already, and I came up to the summit with the Sherpa that I was with, and then there was just one other climber up there when I was up there, cool. Which was really cool. And so, we basically took a few pictures, and it wasn't, bad weather, but it wasn't perfect weather. So I think there was just okay, let's get up and get down. You don't want to waste any time. So.
How about you, Tracee? I remember seeing your little spot dot up on the top of the summit. I was dancing around my living room.
Yeah, I didn't spend hardly any time on the summit. Of Everest. Our weather was not great the day we summited. And I probably spent 10 minutes or less up there, snapped a few pictures. I didn't even want to do that, to be honest. One of the guides that I was working with, he convinced me that I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't take a photo. But I was like, we got to get down. Like, I was scared. So not long. And that's how most of my, I've done 2 other 8,000 meter summits. And Makalu, we didn't waste any time. On Choyu, I did get to have an experience like you had, which was amazing, where it was sunny. We were taking our masks off, high-fiving. I was with the same Sherpa that I climbed Everest with, and I feel like we got to hug and be like, this was what the moment we wanted to have on Everest, but we were so afraid of for our lives that we weren't going to horse around. So yeah, not long on the Everest summit, not long at all.
Well, I also want to encourage you guys as younger climbing friends. One thing that I can honestly speak about as an old climber, kind of a retired kind of a Himalayan climber, is, and also to our audience out there, if they're young people that have dreams that, you're listening to us talk about these experiences and you're inspired, get out there and do it. I got to tell you, life just goes by way too quickly. And I feel so blessed that I got to meet the people I met and go to places like Nepal and Tibet and spend time at places like Mount Everest. And, I think that's one thing we can all agree on, is that the Himalaya and Mount Everest have given us some of the very best experiences of our lives. So, young people, don't delay. Please put your dreams into actions, because life is way too short. So please go to the QR code that will be posted. You can go to coloradosnowsportsmuseum.org if you'd also like to make a generous donation to the museum on our behalf. And I'm going to hand this off to Jen now.
Wow. Thank you. I have so many more questions. I want you guys to come back. It's so cool. Like, this could go on and on and on. What an incredible experience. And I just have one quick question. I hope it's okay. You guys all talk about the Nepalese people and how special they are. And as an American, like, what can we do to help them? Like, what's one thing? I know Ellen has done Climb for Literacy and done many things for them, but just if there's an organization or something. I mean, I know we're promoting the Colorado Snow Sports Museum here today, but it's so I don't mind. Just one quick, if you could answer, Ellen. And
I think that Tracee and I have both supported the Z Foundation. It's DZI. Our friend Jim Nowak, who spent many years living here in Vail, is still the executive director of that organization, and they're really doing grassroots, important work in Nepal as far as clean drinking water and education and initiatives like that. Kristine, do you have another? I think Z Foundation, and anything from a medical perspective in Kathmandu or anything?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, so please check out the Z Foundation, and thank you for asking that, Jen. And hopefully we're all going to be able to be beyond the COVID times, and we can go there. As Kristine said earlier in the presentation, just trekking up to Everest Base Camp is the trip of a lifetime. So there are a lot of ways that we can support tourism in Nepal when we can travel again.
Good. Well, again, this ties in so wonderful to our mission that these women trained actually in the Vail Valley and did this. And then the state of Colorado lends itself so much to training at high altitude and getting people ready to go to Everest and go to base camp and experience the beautiful country of Nepal and all of this. So please, again, we would love to be in person. We would so much rather do this with all of you here. And so if please consider making a $25 donation, and that would be wonderful. And we will put the QR code up. And the museum is open every day from 11 to 6. We're located in Vail, and we have so many stories to tell. And my favorite part of the whole day is when I get to hear all the guests and their stories. Everybody has a story, and that's what I love about my job, is that it's so cool. And so come in, visit the museum, learn about the 10th, learn about everything, the skiing through time and all of our exhibits. And and I get to hear your stories every day. So thank you so much to Kristine and Ellen and Tracee. You guys are incredible. And I do love, we are a fully women organization. We only employ women right now, which is so incredible. It's just kind of the way it's worked out. So it's pretty cool. So we received a small grant from the state of Colorado for that. So thank you to these women who are inspiring us. And please, like as Ellen said, live every day to the fullest. And thank you again. Thank you for visiting the Colorado Snow Sports Museum. We'll see you next Wednesday.